Today we're going to take this one here, the Hario switch, to a new dimension. I think the switch is probably the most forgiving brewer out there. It's the fastest way to get to an elite level cup, but at the same time it can also be turned into one of the most versatile and coolest pieces of equipment if you're just a little bit creative. It's been more than a year since I shared my Hario switch technique, link up here in case you haven't seen it, and I had a lot of great feedback from you guys, so thanks for that. It seems that for many people the recipe is just very consistent, and that's great to hear. But I've also had some specific questions regarding my technique, so we'll go into all those today. And then of course I've been experimenting with a lot of cool switch approaches and hacks and upgrades during the last year that I also want to share. So we actually have quite a lot on the program for today. If you want to transform the humble Hario switch into a super consistent, no bypass hybrid device with a fixed flow rate, almost like a homemade next level pulsar, well, then you'll learn how to do that. So if that sounds good, let's get right into it. And the first thing we'll look at is a question I've been getting quite a few times, and that's how to go about it if you want to make the switch a little bit sweeter, a little bit less acidic compared to my original recipe. And here I've been experimenting with a lot of different things, but in the end what's working best for me is just super easy and simple, and that is to just close the valve a lot faster. So with my original recipe I closed the valve after 45 seconds, and for the sweetness recipe I just closed the switch at 25 seconds. Then I start filling it up with the second round of water, and then I open up the switch at 2 minutes. So basically it's the same, I just closed the switch earlier. That big first pour is really what determines the balance of sweetness and acidity. It's like a volume knob you can twist. So if you just cut it down shorter, then you'll also turn down the acidity. The next popular question is if you can make a bigger version of this recipe, and yes, of course you can, and it's actually quite simple. Buy one of those, a big 0.3 size of the Hario V60 dripper, and then you remove the base, then you take the Hario switch base, remove it, insert this one here, and it fits right into. It has the same kind of diameter, so also the same flow rate as the standard switch, and now you have a bigger version. But there's one important thing to remember: if you're brewing bigger batches, then it will also take a lot longer time for all the water drain. It will also take a lot longer time to pour. So let's say you're doing my standard recipe with a 50-50 split, but you're increasing it to the maximum size. I would say probably around 45 grams of coffee to 720 milliliters of water. Then you'll probably find that it takes you more than a minute to pour in all the water. Probably it will be around 1 minute and 20 seconds before you finish pouring, and then after that the water also has to drain. So with that kind of capacity, I would recommend that you close the valve at 1 minute and 30 seconds, or perhaps even longer if the drain is a little bit slow. Then you pour the second half of the water, and then you open the valve to release everything at 2 minutes and 45 seconds instead of 1 minute and 45 seconds as usual. So the principle is pretty much the same, but you just have to keep in mind that each stage takes a bit longer, the pouring, the draining, so you need to add a bit of extra time at each stage. I'll add some directions here on the screen, and then you can take a screenshot and just experiment a little bit from here. I think the big switch is totally doable, and if you often find yourself having to make more coffee, let's say probably around 4 cups, then it's just a really useful technique. You might have to grind just a few clicks coarser, but you should be careful here, because I'd rather keep the grind size quite close to the original and just have a slightly longer brewing time. Now let's talk about upgrading the cone. I've been using this switch/Mugen hybrid for a while. For me, there's one main reason to exchange the glass switch with Mugens. I have 3 switches here in front of me, and actually I've replaced all of them with Mugens, and that reason is that I also want to use them for side-by-side comparison when I'm testing new gear, new grinders for example. When you're testing a lot of coffee gear like I am, then it's very useful to have some consistent gear that's easy to use, and I find that with the Mugen and switch combo I can just brew very small quantities of coffee, so I don't waste a lot of coffee, and I can do it in a very consistent and repeatable way. So with the switch Mugen combo, I don't have to worry as much about preheating as I would if this was glass, and at the same time I don't have to worry about breaking them, and it can be a little bit hectic in my test environment if I have to brew a lot of different coffees. I think compared to cupping, this is just a more realistic way of brewing, and I think it's better at getting out the differences between grinders, find out which grinder is actually cleaner, more consistent. I think it's better to do it with Mugens. I combine combine the Mugans with these Triton servers here. So that means that they're all going to be very sturdy, and I don't risk breaking anything, and they're easy to move around on my coffee brewing station. And then when I do my blind testing, I take 3 cups and rotate them on a spinning plate, and I taste them blindly. And then I always use a refractometer to ensure that the cups have a TDS that's within a super close range of each other. And here's a little bit of advice if you're also going to test grinders at home, and that is that you should use a refractometer. If you don't measure the TDS, it's very easy to mess up the test. You will probably end up just picking the cup with the highest TDS, so you don't really pick the best grinder, you just happen to pick the best grind size. So it's not because I love Mugans or bypass brewing in general that I use these ones here. It's mainly for practical reasons. Actually, there is something that I have become quite a big fan of, and that is to add a Kalita wave filter in the Hario Mugan and then just use it as kind of a flat bottom brewer. You can add it just like it is. If you pre-wet the filter carefully with a tap water stream down the center, it will fit in pretty snugly, and the brewing will be a little bit like if you're using the origami dripper. Or you can also combine the Mugan with something else. For example, if you put a smaller 51mm size puck screen down in the bottom, then you will get a slightly wider diameter, so the brewer will act a little bit more like a Kalita dripper or an April dripper, but just with that added benefit of having the immersion option if you wish to use it. There's also another cool hack that I've been testing recently, and that is combining the switch with the drip assist here. So now you just have a super consistent, no bypass hybrid device with a fixed flow rate, so it's almost like a homemade kind of next level pulsar. Okay, so there you have it. I think we're at a stage in coffee history where the Hario switch momentum is just incredibly strong. For me, it's just the easiest way to get super delicious pour-over coffee, and as we've seen today here, there are just so many ways to add a little twist and make it even more fun. If you still haven't seen my original recipe or can't remember how to do it, then I'll just put the link on the screen here, and then you can just click it, and then I'll see you over in that video.